My overall feeling on Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, it's definitely not a book, it's a play, but it's descriptive enough where you can comfortably read it as a book and understand everything that's actually happening. However, it was extremely brief, and you can tell it wasn't actually written by J.K. Rowling. It was more like her ideas, taken by Jack Thorne and John Tiffany. It would probably look very good in a play, depending on the actors, the setting, and whatnot. But as a story overall, it just didn't feel like it had enough content. You just had little snippets here and there of the ideas that J.K. Rowling possibly had in her head, but it just definitely does not compare to the first 7 books. So the story starts in platform 9 3/4 as they're about to cross over Harry and Ginny being married with their 3 children, James, middle child Albus, and youngest daughter Lily. We see in the ending of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows that James had already been there with his family in his first year to Hogwarts. I'm just kind of questioning why Harry has to take Albus by the shoulder and tell him, best do it at a bit of a run if you're nervous, when he's obviously already done it before. It's not that difficult. You just walk at a wall. That in the second page, it's just repetition. If I wanted to hear the same lines being said, I would just go back and watch the first movie. I want new content. In the ending scene of Deathly Hallows, Albus is talking to his dad Harry about his concern over getting sorted into Slytherin, and that's very understandable why he would be worried about that, considering his entire family and cousins are all in Gryffindor. It's repeated just a little bit too much, and it kind of seems like all of Albus's problems are blamed on being in Slytherin house. It's not where we come from, but our choices in life that make us who we are, and that's exactly why Harry even got into Gryffindor. So instead, we should be looking at, why is it that James, the oldest brother, is such a jerk, and he's the one that actually got into Gryffindor? Ginny was pretty similar. She knew when to be strong and bossy, but she also knew how to respect Harry and let him be his own person, learns how to step up for herself, and instead of just being in the background and letting the trio, Harry, Ron, and Hermione, go off on their own adventures and solve all the problems, Ginny places herself as a priority, saying, no, you married me, you're committed to me, and these are my children too. So if you're gonna travel back in time, I'm gonna go with you. You can't just leave me behind because I'm not one of your best friends. Like, I am your best friend now. In the alternate universes, for some reason, I have a lot of problems with this, but Hermione ends up not fulfilling her potential as a human being just because she didn't end up with Ron. It was her friendships with Harry and Ron that transformed her, that made her be emotionally sensitive to other people's needs rather than just a know-it-all. And also, in one of the 2 alternate universes, Ron ends up, one of the Puddle twins that he takes to the dance, he ends up married to one of them. So why can't Hermione just end up with someone else? Alright, so Scorpius and Albus are best friends because they were both the same age and both got sorted into Slytherin, and Scorpius being the son of Draco and his wife, who, spoiler, ends up dying from some sort of unnamed disease. The 2 have trouble making friends. They become very close, and I found it really odd, similar to when Hermione, she would go and run up to Harry like, oh, my best friend, I've missed you. But when it came to Ron, it was kind of awkward at first, and you can see there was something else in between them, some sort of tension, and that built up throughout the years. It was like this, but exaggerated into an uncomfortable feeling. There was at least 3 scenes that this happened. They would be jealous of each other. Scorpius liked Rose, which is Albus's cousin. Albus had a crush on Delphi. In the end, when everything is resolved, you see Scorpius ends up actually getting a date with Rose, and you're like, hooray! They're both happy for each other. So if they're gonna end up with girls, why even suggest that they like each other in that way when obviously we're never gonna get to hear the end of the story? You plant that seed in our minds, and this is already sounding like fan fiction. Like, this entire book sounds like fan fiction because you can tell it's not written by J.K. Rowling. I just don't feel like, I mean, I want to know. Like, would she really be like, oh, they hugged tightly, held for a second, then released and looked at each other weirdly. Do we do that now? Do we hug? Is that normal? Over and over again? Why? Why even do that? Cedric Diggory's father, Amos, I believe his name was, goes to speak to Harry and ask for a time turner to bring his son back from the Triwizard Cup when he died. You clearly, like, page 36, call Delphi like his niece. And then we're told apparently she put some sort of like memory spell, like memory altering spell. How come at the exact moment that she travels back in time, all of them, are looking for their children? How is it that at the exact moment that they need to find out the truth, suddenly the spell just wears off and Amos Diggory just remembers and says, oh, that's not my niece? Like, does traveling in time like cancel out spells? So we learn that the trolley witch, her only job happens twice a year when the students are going back and forth from Hogwarts, and she's been doing this for at least 200 years now. So all she does all year round is just make sweets and pumpkin pasties for the children, and she's just like a slave to her job that she only does twice a year. So she's supposed to safeguard the train because it's enchanted so that the students have no way of getting off, that they're supposed to get to their destination. But she throws a pumpkin pasty as if it was a grenade. Why would she be able to hurt or threaten the children that way? Okay, and then she goes on, when they're on the top of the train, she goes on to name the people who have tried to get off before and haven't succeeded. Not any random students that we may have slightly heard of, but specifically Fred and George Weasley and Sirius Black. Tell me how Fred and George Weasley, like the two biggest pranksters that we have ever heard of in the entire Potter universe, weren't able to distract her in some sort of way to get off the train. Okay, but Sirius Black, the first person to break out of Azkaban, somehow was not able to get past the trolley witch, but these two children were able to do what he wasn't. Harry starts seeing flashbacks in his dreams to number 4 Privet Drive, kind of like a flashback to the original stories, but with sort of new content that pertains to what's happening now. I really did like that. However, it made no sense that Harry's scar started to hurt, because we know when Voldemort attacked Harry, the part of Voldemort's soul that was in Harry died, and that was his direct connection to Voldemort. Logically, does not go with the story. I don't know how else to explain that. If Harry killed Voldemort and Voldemort no longer exists in their current reality and never gets the chance to come back to them, how is it that in that space and time Harry feels that premonition? Furthermore, it can be understood that Bellatrix obeyed Voldemort to his every command. So if he said, let's get it on, she would obey him, and that's not a problem. The problem is, if you calculate Delphi's age, she is, let's say, in her early 20s or so, the book describes her. She's older than Albus and Scorpius, but not as old as Harry. She's sort of like the in-between generation. If Voldemort died for the first time when Harry was an infant, about 1 year old, Voldemort got Bellatrix pregnant when he had already come back from the dead. If he was not even able to regenerate cartilage for a nose, how is he able to make viable sperm that it's physically possible? Unless they did some sort of like magic fertility charm. And then why would they purposely have a child together? Because wasn't Bellatrix married? Why would Voldemort want a child that we have never heard about? So Draco still continues in the theme of transformation. we can understand that because of all these family issues, he's never been able to become friendly with Harry. However, it's just kind of weird that he admits he was envious of Harry, Ron, and Hermione's friendship. And then there's like this really strange line where Hermione is sort of like organizing everything that's gonna happen, and Draco says, "Oh, Hermione Granger's bossing me around, and I think I like it." And that sort of gave me like this weird vibe. Like, obviously Hermione is married, like, okay, Draco is single, but Hermione is and has always been with Ron. But everything else, like they fought it out again, and they just made peace, and their sons get along well. You finally see like a resolution to all that drama. Finally, even though it took like 30 years, they're friends. Lastly, so they took the chance to bring back Snape in the alternate universe, and I think that was pretty smart. You see Snape, a character that should be dead and that would never have the chance to know the truth of his sacrifice and if it was worth it, find out that the world remembers him, that he was triumphant. Lily's descendants get to live on because of him, and moreover, even though they aren't able to defeat Voldemort, in the alternate universe, he becomes friends with Ron and Hermione, and you see a different side to him. He doesn't seem so much like a lonely, bitter old man, but he actually cracks some jokes and it's lighthearted, and you kind of just get to let your nostalgia take over for that, and you just enjoy that moment for what it is, even knowing it's not even really happening because it's an alternate universe that gets changed back. But seeing what his personality would have reacted to this situation was very beautiful to see. So my final thoughts, I basically pointed out to you guys just like very specific things I had problems with and just small shining moments. Should you go out and buy this for $30? Absolutely not, okay? I pre-ordered this like months ago. I wrote it down on my calendar. I got my gold ticket. I waited in line for an hour to get home, and I read this in like a very brief amount of time. The experience of reading this was absolutely nothing like the original 7 books. And like I keep repeating, it does not sound like J.K. Rowling wrote this. So, if you're a real fan and this was a part of your childhood and the curiosity is just getting to you and you need to know, what I would say is hold off and go watch the play.